Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Witch's Court, also known as Witch at Court, a South Korean television series from 2017 that stars one of my favorite actresses, Ryeo-won Jeong. Now this K-drama is 16 episodes long, with each episode being approximately 60 minutes in length each. So this show is about a spunky, intelligent, and crafty attorney who attempts to bring criminals to justice, one of which is directly linked to the disappearance of her mother that happened years ago. Now, she uses some underhanded tricks to get her way during the opening episode, but it really makes her a likable and practical character to follow. She won me over within minutes, despite being rather selfish at times. There are occasions, for example, where she does not act morally at all, but instead chooses to play politics for her own career aspirations. And I actually liked that trait because, it added some multi-dimensionality to her character. She eventually gets assigned to the sex crimes division against her will, and the story goes from there. So the main focus of Witch's Court is on, basically, slimy, successful businessmen who use their influence to sexually harass women. Now this is rather topical, given current events and a focus on harassment in both media coverage and high-profile celebrities nowadays. The potential problem, however, is if this series were to take it to an extreme, right, and vilify all men as slimy perverts and all women as victims of their slimy perversions. But thankfully, even in the opening episode, to start, a man puts our protagonist in her place for thinking that he's a pervert even though he is not one. You know what I mean? And there are also situations where women wrongly accuse men of harassment, as well as acts of harassment targeted against men. So there's a nice balance here that I appreciated in this show. I really enjoyed some of the tricks and immoral tactics that the protagonist uses to win a few of her cases, especially in cases where the defendant is guilty, and she baits their attorney into making a big mistake to kind of put him away. However, that leads to the biggest and most obvious flaw of this show, the script. Alright, if you go into this expecting something like, as professional as like Law and Order, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Alright, some of the court scenes have like illogical gaps in terms of both process and argumentation, but the biggest script writing flaws lie outside of the courtroom cases. Because really, not a lot of this show takes place in the courtroom. Most of it takes place outside of the courtroom as they gather evidence and there's drama going on, right? So this is one of those K-dramas that makes the city of Seoul seem like it's the size of 2 square blocks. You know what I mean? Because people just so happen to run into each other all of the time in this. You know what I mean? So for example, our protagonist just so happens to meet multiple people by chance who are connected in some way to the disappearance of her mother. Like, what are the chances that this would happen? Like, if I was in New York City and my mother disappeared, what are the chances I would run into, like, 2 or 3 people that are associated with her disappearance? You know what I mean? It's just like, come on. You know what I mean? There are a lot of other contrivances that are used in this show as well. For example, a suspect is arrested, but left completely alone with his cell phone intact after he's arrested, so he could call his buddy at home to eliminate incriminating evidence before the cops get there with their warrant. Another example is when a suspect is allowed into the apartment of a prosecutor because the landlord is just a complete moron. And then there's one of the most infuriating moments where the prosecution obtains a major piece of evidence in one of their cases, but leaves it in an unlocked drawer, a desk drawer, in their office, while everyone goes out for lunch for a few hours. It's like, hey bad guys, if you want to steal this crucial piece of evidence, we'll just leave it right here for you. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of problems with the script in this show. And then, the tone becomes very soap opera-ish during the later episodes when, the case of our protagonist's missing mother comes into play. So the writing during the latter episodes is probably even worse than the more earlier episodes, and that might annoy the viewer a little bit. Now, to be fair, there are some cleverly written moments here and there. Especially near the beginning. There's some pretty cool little tactics our protagonist uses in court. But still, those positives cannot really make up for all the sloppy writing that's in the rest of the show. If this were a romantic comedy or an action thriller, like a lighthearted action thriller, you might be able to roll along with the script writing flaws, which is what you can do in some K-dramas. But this show is about sexual assault and bringing criminals to justice. So, they should have had a better script here. But with all that said, Ryeo-won Jeong is fantastic in this show. She's really great. She is assisted by an interesting character to play. They did write her character pretty well, I think, and she's pretty interesting. But her performance is just lights out awesome in this. She actually makes this K-drama fairly fun to watch despite its flaws. And the serious themes that are at play here. She kind of struts her stuff, doesn't take any crap from anybody, you know what I mean? And is willing to disobey orders from superiors when she feels it's necessary. Her character does have an arc as well, which is good. She portrays that brilliantly with a wide range of emotions and how she reacts to things throughout the show. Because the way that she reacts to things at the beginning of the show is different in how she reacts to them at the end. If you've seen the movie Castaway on the Moon, you know that this woman is one of the best actresses on the planet. She is, in my opinion. And she proved it again in King of Dramas, and again in History of a Salaryman, and I think she proves it again in Witch's Court, because I moderately enjoyed this show despite all of its weak script writing, and it's almost entirely because of her, you know what I mean? So, do I recommend Witch's Court? If you're not a fan of K-dramas in general, or you're not used to the cliches of K-dramas, you should probably skip this one and check out Stranger instead, the one starring Doonabe, because that one is good for anybody to watch, you know what I mean? But if you are a fan of K-dramas in general, and their cliches tend to not bother you as much, you might want to check out Witch's Court for the lead actress alone, really. So, yes, it's worth watching, depending on who you are. It's currently available on Viki.com, and as always, I'll see you next time.